Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third part in this instructional series, third and final part. Today, we're going to be setting up DATUM. So to go over roughly what we've done in the first stream, we set up a Bitcoin node. That's Bitcoin knots. We went through all the settings, as that's what defines the blocks you will make as a miner, is the settings on the node. Then we went through in the second stream how to run all this stuff on a Start9 and an Umbral. That's for miners with smaller setups that want to have something more plug and play. And in this final stream, we're going to be going back to that first box where we built the Bitcoin node, and we're going to be setting up DATUM to use that node now. And then we'll be pointing a miner, just a BitAxe I have on my local network, to that box, and it will be mining, blocks created locally by a self-sovereign miner. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I have Jason and Luke with me. You boys here?
Hello.
And the Bitcoin price just crossed $100,000 again. So we are officially back. It's no longer over.
What it matters is $64 a tonal Bitcoin, and it's been over the whole time.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yes. Tonal Bitcoin. How could I forget? Okay. So without further ado, we have. Where are we? This is the Bitcoin node that we set up last time. Just to refresh everyone's memory, if you go into settings and mining, we went through all this stuff. We went through all these masses of configuration options. Oh, did it just change that? Oh my goodness. Well, it's going to ignore that, right? It's not going to restart the node. Like, what does that do, Luke? If I change settings in here but leave the node alone, it's not going to do anything, right?
If it says you need to restart the node, then it won't have any effect until you do.
I just pressed
if you
cancel.
It won't do anything.
Right.
I'm getting screwed by my inexperience with GNOME. Like the mouse keeps doing intelligent things that I don't expect. So anyway, let's go back to my happy place, which is terminal. Hopefully everyone can see this all right. I don't see any messages in the chat. And yeah, so this is it. So we have a Bitcoin node, as mentioned, and now we need to compile DATUM, configure DATUM to use it. And that's about it, I would say. Well, we'll get something mining using it as well. Okay, so we're going to start by, I guess, just let's make a DATUM directory. And then we'll go into there, and then we're going to clone the source code. So where will it be? It's on OceanXYZ, right? github.com/ocean-xyz/datum gateway. It's an underscore, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we got it. So there it is. Here is the source code for Datum Gateway. We can check out the latest version as well. So, I mean, it will be on that anyway, but let's be deliberate about it. All right. So here we are on the latest version of it. And then, do we have the dependencies written in here? Some sort of...
They should be in the README.
Yeah, so I can cat the README. Let's see what it says. We need all this stuff. So we'll be meticulous and just install all this. So we're just installing the dependencies here. This should not be too onerous. And there we go. Now with that, there were the instructions in here as well for how to actually do it, to compile it, and that's what this command does here. Oh man, click and drag is Linux doesn't know how to do click and drag apparently. So we're just running these two commands: cmake dot and then make. So
Verify the signature.
What's that? Oh, should we?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? All right.
Git log --show -signature. And so you can see the very top commit there that you've got checked out has a good signature.
Nice. And this is using the same keys that we used to verify the Bitcoin knots
Correct.
download as well. So if you want to know how to like get your to get the keys, inside your GNU PG, I guess, then, or is this? I don't know.
Well,
This
we
is
did all that.
GPG.
We did all that in the
Yeah,
live
we
stream.
did. We did all that, so I'm not going to
Video
go into
one.
it. All right, so we have a good sig, and we use that to just generate. It'll be in here, right? There should be DATUM Gateway. Just all right. Did we just make that? No. Where's the gateway that I just built?
You didn't build it yet.
You didn't build it
I
yet. You were
interrupted
about
you.
to. And then
All right. So now we're gonna, we're in the main directory. We're gonna cmake dot. Shall I separate these two things?
You can. You don't have to.
All right. So we did cmake dot. Now there'll be a bunch of other stuff in here, and then we can just write make, and that's it. That's it. That was us. We just built Datum. It's incredibly lightweight, and we have it here. This file here is the gateway, but we need to configure it first. So we need to make a configuration file. So I'm going to do that in the parent directory here. So this this file, we'll call it datum gateway config.json. So it's a JavaScript file, JavaScript object. And I don't think I'm going to like manually write it. So did you look at those cheat sheets I sent you, or that Jason sent you, Luke? Are you all right with me just generating the file that way?
I didn't look at it. No.
All right. Is there like a template gateway config anywhere, Jace?
no, I mean the main thing is if you do like datum gateway -- help, it'll show you how all the config things work. So
Right. So let's go back up there, and we'll run datum gateway.
We should probably add it to the datum repository.
right.
All right, so we're going to help here, and this is going to give us all of the things. But again, I'm not going to pull this in manually because that would be crazy.
I'd say your script is fine to get it configured, and then just go through and show the actual config when it's done and how to.
Right. So my script, without like, you're all right with me telling the world this thing exists, right? This repo.
Seems fine. It's nothing that anybody else couldn't do.
All right. So here we have the cheat sheet that you shouldn't use, but here we go. Bitcoin mechanic / what was it called? Datum boxes, because that's what we're doing here. We're building a datum box. And in here, I've got a bunch of helpful things. So datum config generator is what we're talking about here. So this is going to be fun. Let's just run that. So I'm going to need to make it executable first. Now it should be green. Great. And can you guys see the bottom of the screen all right here?
Yeah, looks fine.
All right. So datum config generator. So I'm going to put it in. What is actually the.
Should be home mechanic datum.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So I'm going to put it in /home /mechanic /datum. That's where I'm going to put the config. I don't need to name the file now. So the RPC, that's fine to use, I imagine. Is that what we set it to in knots?
I don't know what you set it to in knots, to be honest. We could always check.
Let's take a look at knots, shall we?
It should be settings options and then network, I do believe.
8333.
Network port and your RPC port is not in there.
I mean,
Luke,
it'll be
help me out.
8332 by default, won't it?
It should be 8332 by default. I never used the defaults though. That's just me.
Luke, do you know?
Do I know what?
What are we using for the local host port?
For RPC?
Yeah.
I believe it should be 8332 by default.
Well, we got it as 28332, but that's probably what's in here. So.
That would be testnet normally, but maybe you change that manually.
Let's just go into there. This is where it's going to be set.
Oh, you do have it 28332.
RPC port. Yeah, it's there.
Isn't testnet 18332?
Could be. I mean, there's multiple testnets now, so who knows?
Right.
Right.
So if you're using the settings we got here, then yeah, I mean, we did go through all this.
We definitely went over a lot of that in the last stream, so we're kind of overlapping a little bit here.
Yeah, but we also need to turn this on. So remind me to do block notify later.
Yep.
Right, because I have that off. All right, so we'll use the default for this. You can just press enter on this script I wrote. RPC user, that's going to be datum user, yeah. Then the password, which that's not in here, but I think I would have saved it. Yeah, cat RPC creds. We went over how to generate this as well. So here's the password, which I can't copy because Debian won't let me click and drag unless I do it really slowly. There we go, copy. Going to paste that in here. Then the work update, 40 seconds is default. That's fine. Stratum listen port, 2334 is the default. Max clients per thread, 2000, max threads, 10. So what the combination of those two things means is that you can have 20,000 miners pointed at this box, which is not ridiculous at all. You can do thousands on a Raspberry Pi. As mentioned, DATUM is very, very powerful. Max clients, yeah, that's the combo of those two, but you can drop that if you want without, and that will take precedence over the multiplication of these two values, if I have that correct.
Yeah, and it can't be higher than the max threads times max clients per thread.
Yeah. Var diff min, default 8. Hey, so on
eight is a little low.
Yeah, it is.
16.384 is probably pretty good.
So this is going to be a power of 2, and that sets the difficulty that for a valid share for your miner to submit to Datum. If you're mining to an upstream pool, i.e., Ocean, the pool's minimum difficulty will be what is used rather than what you set here. If what you have here is lower, so if you're using Datum, currently Ocean's minimum difficulty is 121,000, whatever the power of 2 is. That's the first
2 to the 17th. So
2 to the 17, which is 100 and something thousand.
Yep.
And that will be the minimum difficulty, right? So you can set this to 8 in here if you want, but it will be ignored. Your Datum box isn't going to send Ocean shares that were found at difficulty 8 because that's just ridiculous. And, there'll be hundreds of millions of them, submitted by an S19 every minute or something, which is just, not useful for anything. Enter pool address. So we're going to use the default here. I don't know why. Oh, sorry. No, that's a Bitcoin address, and you need to write that in. And there's a bunch of circumstances to go over here. But if you're mining on Ocean and you have a Bitcoin address in your miner appended with a worker name optionally, and you have some settings that we'll get into later, this address will only ever be used as a fallback if you start lottery mining or non-pooled mining. In normal circumstances where you're just mining to Ocean, this address doesn't matter. The address will be what's in your Bitcoin miners. You can change that so that this address is what does matter by turning off a setting later while still mining on Ocean. And I'll go into that, but it's very confusing, but not that complicated. It's just one of those things that's difficult to explain. So in this case, I'm going to go to Ocean XYZ to the dashboard, and I'll just pick some lucky miner. I'm not going to use Electron this time. Actually, I am going to use Electron. Let's have fun. It will just take a while for the stats to load because they have tens of thousands of machines. All right, so here we go. We're going to use this. This is their address. We'll go back to here and we'll paste that in. So that's going to be our address. Reminder, we're not going to be mining to the address because it's what's written here. We'll be mining to that address because it's what will be written in my miner. So the Coinbase tag primary, you can write whatever you want there. If you're lotto mining, if you're mining on Ocean, it will be overwritten with the word Ocean. So you can write whatever you want or write Ocean for your own mental clarity if you like. Coinbase tag secondary. This is the most fun part. This is where you get to name your block. So if you want to write Dave's blocks or whatever, that's where you write them. And then that will be what shows up on mempool space as the name of the block with an Ocean logo, if and when you find blocks. So this is where you get to shout to the world. You know, I don't know what to call that right now, but this is a DATUM demo. In the unlikely event that my BitAxe finds a block in the next hour, it will be called DATUM demo. So that's what I'm going to call it. API listen port. This is for the dashboard that I'll show you later, where you can just go to localhost : whatever this port is, and then you'll see the DATUM dashboard, and it's a static dashboard that just says this is how many miners are connected. This is what our Coinbase looks like at the moment. We'll show you that soon, and I'll leave it as the default port for now. Log to file, default true. This is useful. DATUM is still beta software, so if you ever run into an issue, it would be great if you have logs, so please leave that true. Here you define where the path is. I'm just going to leave it there, so it will go into the DATUM directory that already exists.
Remember
but
the home directory
yeah,
is wrong.
Yep. Yes. What is it again?
Mechanic.
DATUM, yeah, mechanic / DATUM. If I just make a directory that doesn't exist yet, will it like create it? Or
it will not.
All right, let me go and create that quickly before I forget. So I'm going to make dir logs. Yeah, so we got a logs directory now. So I'm going to put it in there, and then the file will just be called logs.txt. So that's where our logs will go. Log level 0 is the most verbose, and there's no harm in grabbing as much as possible if you want to help bug squash. Pool host, that's the default is what Ocean, needs right now. That's what Ocean provides right now. That's clearly labeled beta at the moment. There is no datum.mine.ocean yet because we're not out of beta yet. The pool port, again, that these are set to values that work. Pass workers to pool. So if I can explain this correctly, it's set to true by default. So if for some reason you want to identify all of your miners locally by giving them each unique worker names, but you don't want them to show up on the public stats for Ocean, you would set this to false. You might just want, you might have a whole exahash of miners and you just want them to show up on Ocean's dashboard as, let me just shrink this a little bit. So this is what a miner looks like on Ocean. This is one address, but they have lots of different workers, right? If for some reason that's an issue for your privacy and you want to aggregate them all into one worker name, you can do that. But if you want all your workers to be identified for your own purposes locally, but you don't want them to show up on Ocean stats, you can just turn that setting to off. The one that I showed here, pass workers to pool. And if you do that, then everything will just show up as one worker called default here. And that might have thousands or tens of thousands of petahash pointed to it, and no one publicly will be able to know anything about it. They'll just see that you have this one apparently enormous miner, but whilst locally you can still monitor things and grab logs and stuff individually.
I'll point out that the next option will override this one.
Right, so we're going to leave this one as true. Then pool pass full workers to true. As Jason says, this will override it. So if you set the above one to false, you need to set this one to false as well, right?
Correct. Because then
Yeah.
then it will pass the address that you put in as pool address as the worker name if you have both of those set to false, and then that's it.
Right. So this is where, like, confusingly, this setting becomes relevant. So the fact that we entered this pool address, if we pass full workers to pool and it's set to true, and
Yeah, then if with that set to true, then whatever's in your miner, just like when you mine on Ocean on one of our templates, that will be what shows up on the dashboard, and that will be where you earn your money. With this set to false, it will fall back to that previous option where it's always, if that's set to false, it's always going to use the pool address as the main username for the pool. And then
Yeah.
if the other pass workers to pool option is set to true, it'll append whatever's in your miner's username as the worker name. So it'll be, in this case, 35E, et cetera, dot whatever username you put into your miner.
Yeah.
But with both of them set to true, it ignores that pool address entirely and passes the full username that's in your miner. So you'll have to have your Bitcoin address in the miner username, just like you do on Ocean normally. And then you can append your worker name to that as well in the miner.
Yeah. So in this instance, I'm going to leave it as true. And what that means is what's in the, just to summarize what Jason said, what's in the miner, if there's this Bitcoin address that I've highlighted here, dot worker name, that it's going to pass that whole thing to the pool, and this address is not going to have anything to do with anything. But importantly, Datum requires that this be a correct Bitcoin address so that the failover will work. You can't ignore this. You need to put in a real Bitcoin address there, and there are circumstances in which it can get used, and Datum will make sure that you're covered for those.
Yeah, I guess it's worth pointing out that with both with pass workers to pool and pass full workers to pool set to true, the behavior of your Datum node is the same behavior as Ocean's, the templates we provide. So
yeah. So if you're mining on Ocean already and you want to switch to Datum, you can leave all your miners as they are. You don't need to touch your miners at all. Address dot worker name will work just as well because you're passing full workers to pool by default.
Yeah, then you just have to change the Stratum host and you're good to go.
Man, why does you see how it just like forgets that?
Yeah,
like,
I can't do GNOME.
yeah, no, it's like, hey, I'll just not. Anyway, pooled mining, true or false. So this is a very important setting. So if you set pooled mining only to true, what that means is that if for some reason the pool you're connected to just goes down or your connection to them breaks for whatever reason, your miners, Datum will just stop. And your miners, which from their perspective see Datum as their pool, not the upstream pool. And once their pool, sorry, I'm explaining this badly, but it's a very important setting. So Datum, if this pooled mining only is set to true, if there is no pool for it to connect to, it will kill itself. And that allows all of your miners that are looking at Datum to say, our pool has gone down, let's switch to our backup pool. That's what pooled mining only means. Your miners will automatically switch over to your backup pools. If it's set to false, then Datum will do something more intelligent. If the upstream pool dies, it will get all of your miners to start lotto mining, and that will be to this address here. So that's why that has to be set in case someone sets this to false. But if you just want like a typical setup where, oh, there's something wrong with my pool, I want to fail over to a second pool, which is, best practice for a miner, you want to set this to true just in case something goes wrong with the Datum box or with Ocean or with whatever Datum pool you're using, though obviously Ocean's the only one that exists currently. Have I explained that right, Jace?
Yeah, and that all sounds correct. And I'll also say it's more likely it's some kind of network issue on the client side or whatnot that prevents Datum from connecting to a pool or your miners connecting to the pool that would cause this to trigger. So far in our experience, anyway.
Yeah, the Bitcoin price really tends to do well when Ocean does anything. So We're back to 101,000. You're welcome, guys. If Trump can take credit for it, so can we. So happy to do that.
Worth noting also that even if you set this to true and if your connection to Ocean dies and it kills Datum will still stay running and it'll come back as soon as it can reconnect.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess also worth pointing out for completeness, there is a delay, a small delay between the time that it loses connection to the upstream pool and the time that it will kick off the miners. Eventually that'll be configurable, but it currently isn't. And if that time frame overlaps a new job that needs to be made, that job will be a lotto job for like 30 seconds. So again, you definitely need that pool address in there, because if in that 30 seconds you find a block, it's all yours.
Yep. One day someone is going to have some network instability and solo miner block. And it's going to be funny because they probably won't realize and they'll be mad about something. And then we'll be like, yeah, that accident meant you just earned 3 Bitcoins.
Yeah,
That's going to be a lot of fun. So we leave it as true because that's probably sensibly what most people want to do.
Right.
If you're really big, like multiple exahash, then that might make sense to move that as false. Because otherwise, like if you're just, in the hundreds or tens of petahash range, like the collective amount of time you spend, with Ocean down for some reason or suffering network instability, you're probably never in your lifetime actually going to be able to find a block that makes it, actually that's not true for people with hundreds of petahash. They'll find a block, but
realistically it's probably best for everyone to leave it true and just set a failover to like decentralized stratum connection.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. So right now, what I would recommend is leave this true and set your miner to have a backup pool. You can have backup pools even in the BitAxe software now. I don't know why it isn't standard practice for hosts to say, what do you want as the backup pool? They don't tend to do that. That's kind of got dropped, but every mining user interface says what's pool 1, what's pool 2, what's pool 3, because expectation is that accidents happen, right? And there's never anyone too big to go down every now and again. Like,
Unfortunately, that accidents are usually on the minor side, so it probably won't help that much in that case, but you never know.
Well, miners are the ones dealing with weird electricity.
Right,
and,
right. If your connection to Ocean goes down, probably your connection to everything else is down too. But it never hurts to have a backup.
Always have a backup, guys.
Especially with Datum still being beta software.
Yep. So pooled mining only is true. So we've created this Datum Gateway config now. So inside here, we have this Datum Gateway config. Now we can cat it and take a look and oops. Here we go. Here are all the settings we just did. So this is now just going to work. So we can just run it.
Fix that var diff. It's a little low. You left it at 8.
Well, won't it just all right, let's fix the var diff. So I'll go into here.
16384 is usually the default.
Need a comma? No, it doesn't need a comma because this is not TypeScript. All right.
It's the last item, so it doesn't need a comma.
Yeah, on TypeScript it does, I think. So, what am I doing? Shift ZZ. All right. So now we have this should be corrected now. Yeah. So there's the var diff min. That's a bit more sensible. So we could just start it. I'm not going to do the system D service yet. Shall I just start it and YOLO?
Yeah, let's get it going.
All right. So here we go. There is the no wait. It's in here, isn't it? Yeah. There's the Datum Gateway. So we're just going to start it. And what's the problem here?
Your config's in the directory before that.
Of course. So I can just define it, right?
-C.
What? -C?
One C, yeah.
And then that will just work?
Yep, space, / /datum gateway conf.
Yeah. All right, so now we defined the path where the actual config lives. And this is it. It's running. It runs like in, I don't know, 1 second or something. It's ready. And it's sending work to 0 Stratum clients. So now we're going to have some real fun. let's find out what my IP address is, or is that going to leak a bunch of stuff? I don't want to leak.
You should be good.
All right, IP address. So this is the IP address of the datum box on my LAN. Let's just copy that, clear this out of paranoia, and then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go and find my BitAx. So here is my BitAx. This is my miner. I'm going to go to settings, and now I'm going to point this to the IP address of my yeah, that's right. This is the IP address of the datum box, and then we're going to point it. This is the port.
Nope.
I'm doing something wrong, right?
Stratum port on BitX is the next field.
Oh yeah, thanks. So there's the port. I don't need Stratum TCP. It says that here. Usually on an Ant miner and a Watts miner, this would be prefixed with like this. But BitX doesn't do that.
And your username is wrong. You don't have a dot.
Yeah, I know. So in this case, yeah, I'm going through it. But this is the Bitcoin address because we're pool pass full worker or pool pass full user. Because that's set, that means we need to put the address in here. If we don't put the address in here and just put a worker name, then you won't be mining to a Bitcoin address on Ocean. So that's important to get right. If you don't want to include the address here for whatever reason, and there are reasons you might not want to do that, then you have to turn pool pass full worker to false instead of true. And then rather than the address need to be here, it will use the one that's in the DATUM Gateway under pool address. That it takes a while to understand that. So I'm just gonna like, you'll just have to think through the logic of it. So this is all correct now. This BitAx on my local area network is now going to start pointing at my datum server for work instead of the Ocean pool directly. So we're going to save that. Go away. What?
Why does AXOS call it a Stratum URL if it explicitly does not accept URLs at all?
It should be Stratum hosts, but yeah.
Because you didn't make a pull request to fix it yet.
I made a pull request for something else. I don't think they merged it.
Well, AXOS is kind of nice. If you put in an Ocean, does it work for Datum or just Ocean?
It can't know Datum because that's just a random IP.
All right, so now we wait for the BitAx to restart, but I bet pretty soon here we're going to start seeing some work being sent to one Stratum client. GNOME. Sorry, this is just driving me absolutely crazy. Like, what is that? Why does a held down mouse button have like a... There we go. So we're sent to one Stratum client. Success. That was how quick that was. So the BitAx is now doing work. The templates are being created by the Bitcoin knots node running on this machine. Datum is reaching out to it via RPC, getting block templates, and then it's acting as a Stratum server for miners pointed towards it. And then, importantly, all that work is getting uploaded to an address. Unfortunately, on the dashboard, this is the one thing that makes me regret using this giant address, is I'm not really going to be able to find it.
Just type
maybe
yeah.
.bitx. But I mean, it's probably not going to show up, right?
It should. I mean, I guess you probably
have to wait for a share
yet,
which will be a while. I mean, what is it, 5 minutes on average for a BitAx?
Yeah, give or take. So I would just let it keep running for a while.
Yeah. Where are the logs? There they are. All right, so we got to find a share of this difficulty, guys. And, BitAxes are finding shares, in the hundreds, not the hundreds of thousands. So it does take, a good 5-10 minutes for it to finally find a share that's worth submitting to Ocean. But then that share is worth proportionally more. That was a new work getting sent out, which can mean there was a new network block, or it can just be every 40 seconds because that's how often the work updates by default.
Well, you can see it says false, so it wasn't a new network block.
Nice.
Did the first video cover the configuring the block notify config?
Yeah, we didn't do that yet.
Ooh, I need to do that. So let's do that. So we're going to go back to the Bitcoin configuration. So that's in here, cd, the home directory .bitcoin. Then we're going to change bitcoin.conf. And this thing that I commented out, we're going to uncomment that out. So block notify kill all. What that does is the instant that your node finds out about a block and I guess verifies that it's a valid block, it immediately makes Datum request a new template. Is that correct?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So now we need to restart knots. So I'm just going to kill knots and then restart it so that it actually does that. It'd be kind of interesting to see what Datum does while knots was sort of murdered there.
It will eventually
Probably
freak
didn't
out.
notice.
Well, it might not freak out if if we can get knots restarted in time.
Right. You'll just if it doesn't restart in time, you'll be doing stale work until it realizes.
If we find a block, we'll have no way to submit it to the network.
It should still submit it to Ocean.
Yeah.
Good point. Sorry,
if your
guys.
BitX finds a block right now, I mean, I don't even know what we should do to celebrate, but
I don't know what I would start a new life. I'd move to another country or something. Like,
We'll force mechanic to smash another hard champagne bottle
there you go.
yeah.
on the BitX.
Yeah, right over the BitX. At that point, it has served its life purpose.
Okay. No messages in the brand in chat. Yeah, it looks like Datum managed to, survive that knots restart there. It'd be nice if the network would find a block right now. And show us what happens in Datum when a new network block is found.
It's going to be a 2-hour block just because you said that.
So someone just pointed out that there's another Bitcoin implementation that implemented GBT, so it now works. I don't know anything about it, so I'm hesitant to name drop it here, because it's basically going to be seen as an endorsement if I do. I'll let you guys be the judge of that.
Yeah, if we're going to endorse anything, we should probably look at it first.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but in general, I mean, Datum should work with any node implementation that supports GBT, and currently that's Bitcoin Knots and Bitcoin Core.
And only Bitcoin Knots actually lets you configure anything.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, can I complain about the approach that's sort of being trended towards with Core, or should I be nice on this stream?
I mean, while we wait for a block, we can ponder.
Well, the trouble is the trend inside Bitcoin Core is to kind of remove configurability so that it starts to there is a trend overall in Bitcoin to we have this term the mempool, which is a misnomer, and it's a harmful.
Basically, centralization.
Well, this is the thing. The point is that you have no idea what is out there and what people want to get in the blockchain, but everyone agrees on what is in the blockchain once a block has been found. But everyone is acting. There was this idea that you have zero conf transactions, which isn't a thing. There's just unconfirmed transactions. Zero conf implies that there'll be one conf soon. But the point is, Alice can send the same money to two people at once, which is the double spend problem, which is why Bitcoin exists, to fix that. That was how do we do digital cash without, the double spend issue not requiring a centralized third party to decide whether money has been spent yet or not. That's Bitcoin level 1 is this is why the thing exists. So people start undoing that by talking about there being a homogeneous, consistent mempool that everyone has, that we all agree on, and we know exactly what the next block will look like because all miners are doing exactly the same work. And Bitcoin Core, which is a main implementation, is basically going down that path by removing all the configurability options and making the blockchain as predictable as possible with regard to what's coming next. Wallets are designing fee estimators that look at the mempool and make decisions about what fees you're supposed to pay based on that, rather than look back at what's historically happened in the blockchain, which is the only logical way to actually do it. And even some of the most informed people in the space don't really understand the fundamental just wrongness of that approach. It really does undo the essential purpose of the whole Bitcoin project, and draws a question to why you even have a blockchain in such a circumstance. So it's important to point that out, and I really hope that there's some understanding starts to develop around that. And really, anyone that ever talks about there being the mempool it's really just not how it works. Like, you have a mempool, and your mempool is yours, and it's very important how you configure it, because you're a very valuable resource. When people make transactions, if you consider those transactions malicious, you don't want to relay them around the network, even if you're not a miner. So your mempool settings matter. And if someone's saying, hey, the mempool is full of absolute trash right now, you can say, well, yours might be, but mine isn't. And if people tend to have that understanding, and they have their own power and sovereignty highlighted to them, and they use it, right? Use it or lose it, then that it ultimately informs what ends up in the chain. And if you're the one that has to store the chain, you're a person running a node. So you're not going to
not to cut you off. I mean, it's interesting, like especially now with DATUM, and we have hundreds of people running this already, hundreds of miners connected to the DATUM backend. And one of the few data points that Ocean has to have in order to do this is basically the Coinbase amount. Like, how much is your block going to pay Ocean miners? And for any given time period, that number is never the same, proving that no one has the mempool at all. Like, never. I've never seen any two amounts be the same for the same time period.
Well, it's the same if it's the same pool, like all the Bitmain.
Right. I'm just thinking, like, because even with the stuff with like our templates, like the total for the Coinbase input's going to be the same whether it's Bitmain or not. It's just how that's worked out with the miner how that's worked out with the outputs is different. But in this case, like, the total sum of outputs is never the same. Like, which means their transaction list is not the same. Which means their mempool is not the same. And it's not like we're just doing a random sample of like 3. Like, no, there's hundreds of miners doing this now. And I'm glad the adoption is catching on like that too. So it's just interesting, and it kind of just kills that whole narrative, I think.
So this is watching a blockchain. A watched blockchain never finds a block. So
yeah, that is how
it's been
goes.
24 minutes since the last block, and it is checks watch 10 minutes until the next one. So,
well, if you just want to show what it does, and it will ignore it because it's still the same previous block hash, you can literally just type that kill all command into a console, and it'll tell DATUM that there's a new block. It'll be like, wait, there's not really a new block, and it'll just continue on its merry way.
Kill. So I can just do this, right?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to paste that in here to mimic a new block getting found. So this is it. New network block notification received. That's what it does.
Yep.
And then it sends a bunch of work.
Yep. Yeah. All that did in because there wasn't a new block, it just forced a work update. It didn't actually even force the clients to change over to it. It just like, all right, I guess there's new work. Maybe we should look at it.
Right. And it might be worth mentioning what we're doing there. So in with LND, I mean, maybe this is known, but the ZMQ is somewhat supported in Bitcoin Core, and LND uses that to get new block notifications, but we tested it and found it to be pretty unreliable. And miners can't be not having notifications that new blocks have been found, because then they'll be doing stale work.
The correct way to do it is with GBT's long polling feature, but We don't have that in DATUM Gateway just yet.
Yeah, there were some issues with that when I was testing on Start 9, so kind of just backburnered that for now. The block notify method is effectively as fast as that could be, so it works. There's also a fallback within the DATUM Gateway if, for whatever reason, it sees new blocks and you haven't notified it. It'll resort to this fallback of just polling Bitcoin for new blocks, so you still end up with some stale work, but at least you're not on stale work for minutes. So there's that.
All right. Well, Luke, the thing you're asking me to do, you're going to have to help me to do. And that'll be fun. If you're teaching me, you're teaching the world. So we're all set up here. Now, the only thing is, this is like typically, in my opinion, is usually going to just be a box you have somewhere in the facility where all your miners are without a screen plugged into it. You just SSH into it and just control stuff. So we set up Bitcoin knots in a GUI with a screen and all that stuff so I could screen share. But as you can see, well, we should probably go to the DATUM dashboard, actually. Let's do that quickly before I forget. So here we are. Did this find a share yet? Yeah, we found a share. That's fun. So if we go on here, we can see.
Oh, you already had it pointed to that for a little while, I guess.
Reload it.
Well, I mean, it takes so long to reload stats for these huge miners. All right. So here we go. Yes. We found a share. No, that's from ages ago, eh?
That's from a little bit ago. It should be in the 5-minute average or something.
It's in the 10-minute average.
Well, it's there.
All right.
We don't know exactly when it was found. It might not have updated yet. It usually does take about a minute to update.
All right. So this thing is earning 28 cents per day once it's ramped up and all that. And it is, not an overwhelming percentage of the share log, but we're mining. And we're giving free sats to Electron. They can
28 sats a day might be like $28 a day one of these days.
I think it will be. But the transaction fee will also be $1,000 to get anything in the chain. So so use Lightning is basically what we're telling you for this.
Yep.
I was going to go to the dashboard, right? So we're going to go to localhost : 71, what was it? 35?
52.
7152. All right, so this is the DATUM dashboard. You can see it's connected and ready. That DATUM demo that we set up in the secondary Coinbase tag, that is here. It shows up as a secondary miner tag. That's the name, and that's what would show up, for the name of your block. Shares accepted, 1 accepted share. Amazingly, that's the one my BitX found. And, you have more info down here. It's telling you like what the current Stratum job is, but that changes every 40 seconds. But this is just a static web page, so you'd have to refresh it to actually see what the latest is. This will become outdated quite quickly. And then in here, you have clients. This shows you like a list of all the miners connected to this DATUM. Can I scroll over here? Yeah, so you can kick off a miner if you don't like it for some reason. It will tell you the kind of Coinbase it has because it fingerprints miners. So some miners can only handle small Coinbases, some handle big. It depends. Depends on their firmware, depends on the manufacturer, but fingerprinting is done. It will tell you how long the miner's been connected. That's what subbed means. So we're almost at 600 seconds, 10 minutes. So we're at 15 minutes or something. We've been subbed here. Tells you how long it's been since the last accepted share. So if that's really a long time, then you might want to check that your miner is not doing something funny.
With the BitX, that can be pretty high. So
yeah, it's nothing to be suspicious about here. If that was half an hour, then we'd start to think maybe the BitX is being funny. But I mean, you always go to the logs and you can see that it's fine. So VDiff, that's just the work difficulty. I don't know what V stands for.
It's the variable difficulty that's assigned to that particular miner. Currently, that's the minimum because that miner's not fast enough to get a new one.
Right.
Now Datum is a full Stratum server, so what happens is it targets so many shares per minute, and it will adjust that upward if your miner is fast enough to do more than what the target is, and that's a per miner thing, and Datum supports
Yeah.
that.
So I think an S21 will start to bump up this difficulty if you have
Oh
like
yeah,
target
easily.
shares per minute in the conf set to like something reasonable.
Yeah, even at 8 shares per minute, the S21 and similar devices will hit like quadruple that, like 512 or so.
Yeah, 500,000.
Yep.
Difficulty A brackets A. I don't know what that means.
Well, I guess I can go through all these.
Yeah.
So diff A, and then parentheses A. So diff A, the number outside the parentheses, is the sum of the difficulty of all shares that have been accepted for that miner, and then the number in parentheses is just the direct number of shares. So each share can be worth more than 1 unit, and so that's like the variable difficulty of 131.072 there. 1 share was accepted at that value, so that's the sum currently. And then the same thing for diff R, that's rejected. So if these are actually shares that are rejected by your Datum Gateway, and so if it was rejected, it was never passed to the underlying pool, and if it was accepted, it was. Now there can be a difference there, like if your Datum Gateway and your node are a little behind what the pool expects, like you can get something that shows as accepted here, and your miner gets it accepted, but it might later be rejected by the pool. There was just a network block, by the way, mechanic.
Oh, right. Let's go have a look. There you go. So it's new network block. Then it sends empty work, right? Because we do the empty block speed up because we're competent.
Yep.
So what that does is it means that a bit of work gets done on an empty template.
It was less than 1 millisecond of empty work.
Yes. Less than a millisecond. But it's better than doing nothing or staling for stale mining.
Also depends on the miner and how quickly it can get it to work out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but
the miner
Datum,
will have done more than 1 milliseconds worth of work on that. Stale,
I was just
on that,
pointing out. I was just pointing out that Datum got the work together in a millisecond there. Like both of those timestamps are identical, which is great.
Yeah. So if we find an empty block, like if we were to find an empty block, it wouldn't have been because it was found in that 1 millisecond. It would have been because the miner carried on working on it for longer than a millisecond, even though the Datum had already figured out full work and sent it.
Yep.
This is like explaining that one bit of information has been the bane of my life for the last 12 months.
It's worth pointing out that the block height shown there is of the block you are working on, not necessarily the block that is associated with that hash, which is a little confusing.
Got it. All right. So back here, did you finish going through these or?
The rest of them are somewhat self-explanatory, but you have your hash rate and how long ago that hash rate was calculated. For something like a BitX, it's going to be forever. Currently, Datum doesn't really care about hash rate, so we didn't actually incorporate a lot of useful stats there, but there is a stat that's gives you an idea what it's doing. We're going to make that better later on, or somebody can pull request something.
Yeah, I will say that this one here is a very noisy stat.
Yeah.
Like, so when the BitAxe finds a share, you're gonna look like you have some thug BitAxe that's capable of like 50 terahashes a second, and then it will just say 0 for like the other 99% of the time this stat is around. So, yeah, it's a noisy stat, and people have, it's probably worth mentioning that if you ever see any number followed by the words hashes per second, it's an estimate.
Right.
That it doesn't matter what you're looking at, like whether it's a stamp on the side of your S21 that says 240 terahash or whatever. It's an estimate. The manufacturer made it, they plugged it in, they measured the hash rate over a period of time and then made an estimate. And if it was higher than other models, then they sell that model for more money, but it's still the same thing. So like back when the S19 was like, this is what I know of them. There was like the S19 that was 94 terahash, then there was 96 terahash, then there was 100 terahash, then there was 104 terahash, and 110 terahash. They were all the same machine. It's just they would just do different hash rates, and they would sell the higher hash rate ones for for more money, obviously. But no one knows the actual hash rate of anything. Like, so when difficulty adjustments happen, all that happens is Bitcoin goes, well, I guess the hash rate is this because we found this many blocks. That could have just been luck, right?
Right.
But no one knows. So if this number is giving you like, you know, you're saying that my machine is 180 terahash, but it's really 200 terahash. That's just variance. Like
Right.
no one knows what the actual hash rate is, right? So we just make estimates based on shares over time or blocks over time. Hash rate is always an estimate.
Yeah, and I guess pointing out for the technically inclined, one share is 2 to the 32nd hashes on average. So that's how that number ends up getting calculated. So the BitX has to do a lot of hashes. You're talking like 15 minutes, something worth of hashes on average to find one variable difficulty 131,000 share. That's 131,000 times 2 to the 32nd. So that's how many hashes it has to do on average to find a share. And you can extrapolate that out to larger miners, obviously. But the DATUM Gateway and any pool or anything like that can only estimate the hash rate based on how many shares it sees. So if you can look at the size of these numbers and how infrequent they are, up to a few times per minute, that's where the noise comes in. And the same thing with the Bitcoin network, you see the noise and the difficulty as well over a long period. So
Yeah,
these are all estimates.
so the minimum difficulty I think is like 600 terahash, and that's not terahash per second. That's total terahash. So if you got 60 terahash worth of miners,
Right.
it'll take seconds. You have 6 terahash per second of miners, it'll take 100 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's draw a line into that. I get into making the services, right? So
All right.
I think
Leave that to you.
given what's that?
I'm going to leave that to you.
All right. So in this case, we've got Bitcoin knots running as a GUI. Now, I'll take your advice here, Luke, on what to do. Shall we just go into making a system D process or a service that automatically runs for Datum and just leave Bitcoin as it is? Or do you
Well,
want to set up? Yeah, what do you want to do?
With video one, we set the GUI to start at login. If you're going to do that, you should set your system to auto login as well. But if you don't want to be using a GUI, you may want to turn it into a system D service instead. In that case, you want to go into the GUI and turn off start at login because you can't have both running at once.
Yeah. So start Bitcoin knots on system login. Right. So that's currently not there. So should we go through making a system D process? It might be a bit clunky because all right, let's go through it.
We may also want to explain how to copy the config files, which config files should be copied if you wanted to set up the settings on a GUI system somewhere else and then copy them over.
All right. Well, again, I'll take your word. I'll take your advice on that for whether you want to do it or not. Either way, let's get back to the happy place, the terminal.
Yeah.
All
if
right,
you do
so
ls here, you can see there's several files. So the files you would want to copy if you wanted to move a configuration from one machine to another. Say you configure it in the GUI and want to copy it to a headless machine. Bitcoin.conf settings.json, and looks like you haven't actually changed any of the settings because you don't have the bitcoin_rw.conf file.
well, I guess not. I
But
think we use knots.
Those three are the ones that you would want to copy over.
Yeah. So Bitcoin conf. All right. These are the files you want. Bitcoin conf, you want settings.json, and you want what was the other one?
Bitcoin_rw.conf.
Yeah, which doesn't exist yet. Okay.
But if it's on the same computer, you don't need to do anything special with those. This is just if you wanted to copy the configuration from one computer to another.
Got it. All right. Shall we make the system D processes?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to quit knots, and that will make Datum very upset, but it will get over it. Actually, let's just kill it in here. So I'm going to kill it here with Control-C. So now we're going to make system D processes. So we'll start with the Bitcoin one, but you said a lot is missing from my script. So or it's just a bit skeleton
Put
for
in
now.
directories, cd dot twice. And then if you look under contrib, there's a directory called contrib, and then in it, you've got a Bitcoin D dot service is for the system D. There's also OpenRC and SysB init files, but on a system D system like Debian, you want the dot service.
Right. I'm probably going to change it into mechanic, right?
Yeah, probably. And you may want to change some of the directories and paths as well.
All right. Well, let's go through it. I'm going to copy and paste it to. I'm going to copy and paste that to Etsy system D system, and then I'll need a sudo. Yeah, that will do it, right? Yeah. So
I actually hate system D, so I have no idea how you set stuff up with it.
all right. Well, let's YOLO it and see what happens here. Yeah. All right. Let's just check this one out. Okay. This should be fun. Unit Bitcoin documentation. All right. That's fine, I guess.
You'll want to change the path in the exec start line to where you actually have the Bitcoin D program.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other paths there. Yeah. You may be able to delete the dot through the conf one, but
home/mechanic/not/Bitcoin.
But if you had like done make install on Bitcoin knots, most of this would have been correct.
Yeah, I was gonna like, Datum's upset because the Bitcoin node is not running. I'll just kill that for its own. I don't like torturing a system process like that. So I don't think it's like, oh, I did copy it over, right? Use a local bin Bitcoin D. So that's where it is. Use local bin Bitcoin D. So that's where Bitcoin knots is. So that's what we're starting. PID, is that fine?
it would be worth mentioning if you install from on Ubuntu from the PPA, it'll just be in user bin, not user local bin.
Yep. Good to mention. The Bitcoin conf, let's actually. What's in here? That's gonna be here.
I would just delete the -conf line entirely.
All right. Data.
That's where you want
Also-
to change.
That's where you just copied.
All right.
You could probably delete the line too, because that's also going to be the default.
It is the default, yeah.
Yeah, can't hurt.
It can be wrong, and then I can start downloading the blockchain again, which I don't really want to do.
The line above the PID
Maybe
path, got to make sure that's actually writable by your user.
Just yeah, I would just take out all that and put like /temp for now or something. Well, I mean, leave bitcoin.pid, bitcoind.pid, and just change /run/bitcoind to /tnb. Run should be writable, but
yeah, I don't know if you want to do
now.
that in the production system. We should be giving instructions that people would actually be using.
That's a good point. That is a very good point.
All right, so where are we putting this, guys?
You could just put it in the home mechanic.bitcoin directory.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's where it's going. System notify ready. System notify stoppy. That's fine to leave, right?
Yep, those are there for system D sake.
Yep.
Man, I can't figure out how to make caps lock escape, so I keep not pressing escape.
I think that exec start pre is not going to work.
Yeah, delete the exec start pre because you're not using that path at all.
All right, process management.
I need to change that PID file to the one that you just changed it to up top.
Correct.
I don't know why, but I kind of love that you're doing this like not in a remote shell where you have access to um, like copying and pasting from other things. I don't know why I find it interesting.
Me too. Yeah, this is hopefully more helpful because I don't really know what I'm doing here. So,
Well, I mean, you're not able to cheat.
yeah, exactly. This is legit. The best
Yep.
tutorial ever is the one where someone
You
else
might
said to,
want to increase timeout stop sec if your machine is slow, but this one seems to be plenty fast enough. That's default there is 10 minutes.
all right.
Yeah, it should be
I
fine.
don't. All right, then this we're going to change the mechanic, right?
Yep, both of them.
Freaking caps lock. I'm so used to caps lock being escape. And I don't know how to do it on Debian. Runtime directory. What is this?
I'm not familiar enough with systemd to know.
You know, actually, maybe we should start over.
Oh man, I didn't write this. I didn't open this as sudo. So we do have
Save
to
it.
start over.
Well,
Well-
I just save it as something else. And
Maybe you should go back to your simpler service because this service is actually containerized and is not going to
oh
work
gosh,
very well with all the other paths.
rewind.
I'm over it. Yes. All right, so let me do that. All right. There should be Bitcoin knots in here. Yeah, I did make it.
The jury will ignore the previous.
All right. So this is the far more sophisticated thing I wrote, which is just 10 lines or something. So that's it. That's what the Bitcoin D service is.
Unfortunately, that's a little less secure, but
What is it lacking? Just so we can at least conceptually get out
the
there.
whole containerization.
And we're just not able to do that off the cuff for this video, I'm guessing.
Probably should at least have a practice round on that one before trying to do that.
This will work for now.
Yeah,
And it
All right.
and it does work fine. So keeping in mind we don't necessarily need to containerize it for a dedicated system like this either.
Explain to me, is this enabled or disabled? Don't say yes.
Looks disabled to me.
So what does enabled mean in this context?
Don't know enough about systemd to answer that.
All right, and Luke hates it. So,
Yep.
All right. So anyway, this is the service we made. You can just get a template for this. It's not containerized, but it seems like the consensus here is if this is just a dedicated datum box, it's all right for it not to be containerized. So all you're going to want to do is if you go back here, actually, I'm going to do that in another place. So if you go here, you go into where I downloaded this datum boxes thing. You have a generate Bitcoin service script, right? And what that's going to do is it's going to create this script and put it here. And when you run it, it's also going to ask you what your user and group is, and you need to make that. Datum needs to run as the same user and group as whatever Bitcoin's running as, and you're going to want to, like, if I print working directory, well, actually, no, I don't know, echo, what is it, user, right? That's what we want to be, right? That's what we want to put in this service. But it's going to ask you that when you run the script to generate this service. It's also going to ask you where Bitcoin D is. That's going to be in user local bin if you make installed when you compiled it. But as Luke said, if you're running Ubuntu and you just install knots from the PPA, then it's just going to be a user bin, not user local bin. So yeah, there's a couple of little things there. Restart always, you're going to want that on. Description, name it whatever you like. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to enable it. Enable Bitcoin knots.service. Now, if I go back to the status thing, yeah, so it's enabled now. and then we're just going to check. I mean, it's not really doing anything, is it? Do I need to start it or restart it? CTL restart Bitcoin not service, and then we can check the status again. All right, and now it's just running. And also this means the reason we're doing this is because if the box restarts, the power goes out, whatever, when it comes back up, this is going to just run Bitcoin, which you need it to do. And as you might expect, we're going to do the exact same for DATUM. So in this case, I'm just going to generate the DATUM. I'm going to use this thing, generate DATUM service. So it's going to do a very similar thing, plus X, generate DATUM service. And then we're just going to run that script, generate DATUM service. Default user, again, we're replacing that with mechanic. And now if we go back here, you should see that in here, there's a datum.service. So we can take a look at what it just generated. And this is almost exactly the same. It's just, it is going to be in there, right? And this is where the config file is. This is, wait, let me just double check. That is datum/datum gateway, right? Is there a datum gateway in here? No, there isn't. It's in another directory called datum gateway. So we're going to edit that. I'm going to remember to sudo this time, the datum service. And this is actually in datum gateway /datum gateway. That's actually where the binary is. We could copy that to user local bin if we wanted. We're just going to put it here. And this should all be good. So we can check on the status of that. Why can't I type system status datum.service? It's disabled. So we're going to enable it. And then I think we need to start it, right? Or restart it. What is the way that works?
Either should work in this case.
All right, and now we can tail. What is that journal cotl command? That beautiful one. To actually look at what datum's doing. Because we want to see this, but we're not going to see it right now.
Journal control -F and drawing a blank on the actual flag for separating out of service.
I'll find it.
Bear with
I
me.
know what it is. No, it's cool. I know what it is.
I actually need to like go in a console and type it so that I know what I'm doing. It's like just one of those things.
Oh yeah, I got it. So it's tac u datum.service tac f, I think.
You already had the F, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's how I have it. Right. So now we're seeing exactly the same thing, but this is now just watching the process. So all that was in aid of just making Bitcoin and Datum run when the system powers itself up without you having to do anything, which obviously is ideal, right? You don't want to have to manually rush to your site or, manually start up Bitcoin and Datum every time there's a power cycle. And that's it. So now we have the BitAxe up and happy again. It's working again. Has it found any more shares? It's found 2 more shares. As I said,
Amazing.
Thug BitAxe. And that's literally it. So as far as I know, we've covered everything there. Yeah.
One of those shares was blocked. Just kidding.
That'd be great.
I wish.
Yeah. We'll end the stream when the BitAxe finds a block and we've, done everything.
Oh boy.
Yeah. We'll fast forward that bit for the YouTube upload. So
when are we coming back to the stream?
Okay, so yeah, I don't have any notifications on Twitter. It's a good time for questions. I don't know if we have any. I don't see any being posted in our internals. And without really anything else, I don't think there's any questions. I think it's a good place to wrap up, unless you guys have anything you want to add.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is like kind of this seems simple for like what the setup is, and you have a BitAxe pointed at it, and this is way overkill for that, but it does work. but you could literally run exahashes of miners with this exact setup that was done. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I will point out that one of the miners on Ocean is running this hardware. One of the bigger miners that's already found some datum blocks.
Which is great.
Yeah, so this hardware works great. They haven't had a single hiccup. It's been months now. So this is rock solid. Luke comments that the hardware itself is not necessarily it's an Intel chip, right? And we have issues with those, but finding perfect hardware without some sort of complaint is just so difficult to do. Like the Purism Intel NUCs are really cool because they disabled the Intel management engine, and that's what the Start 9 sell when you buy the server pure. So those are really cool. They're one of the best bits of hardware and most trustworthy bits of hardware you could probably ever buy. And they run Datum right out of the box if you're running Start OS on them, so you can just plug into that. But on the other hand, Start OS is more experimental than something like Debian, so you have a trade-off there. We've been trying to find the perfect hardware to recommend for ages, and it's just so hard to come up with something that doesn't have some sort of gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if you're running an exahash of miners or something like that, you probably should have some server grade hardware with ECC RAM and whatnot, so that you have no issues.
Yeah, agreed.
This is great and will work fine for the majority of use cases, and you can put quite a bit of power through it. But yeah, you probably, if you're at that level, just spend a couple bucks on a decent server and ECC RAM, install Linux on it, and go that route.
Yeah. So to summarize, you don't need a very powerful machine to run thousands and thousands of miners.
No.
And that's this box we just built here. Like Jason said, it's overkill for a bit axe. It could run thousands of miners without breaking a sweat. And most of the resources are still going to be used running the Bitcoin node, not Datum.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess going into some of the benefits there too, we mentioned it before, but the Datum Gateway is basically an aggregator of the hash rate as well. So instead of having hundreds or thousands of connections to your upstream pool, you have your miners connecting locally to Datum, and then that connects to the pool with just one connection, and that saves on bandwidth. So we do have at least one miner using some really low bandwidth connectivity out in Timbuktu, and and they're able to mine perfectly fine on Datum because of that, which is cool.
Yeah, it's strictly better to mine with Datum. There's additional complexity for the miner, but work is getting to your miners faster because it's not having to use the internet to do it. And like Jason said, having thousands of miners connect directly to a pool from some remote site with cheap electricity but bad internet is just horrible. And it's been plaguing miners for ages because there isn't really great proxy software out there. Datum just does so much of that, reducing the bandwidth requirement between the pool and the miner drastically.
Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well, we're good. Hit us up. Someone, we have some suggestions here. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about other OSs. I mean, this does, I think, have people got it running on BSD and Mac and
funny
Windows?
Enough, the setup that the person in the chat just mentioned with WSL is one of the ones I've used to test with the NOTS node on Windows and the Datum in WSL, and it does work fine. So it can be done. I don't know if I'd suggest that for, I don't know, as a permanent setup, but it does work.
All right.
You would never suggest using Core because that just centralizes all your policy.
Right. I mean, if you for whatever reason just agree with Core's policy, I mean, that's your right to do so. I'd still suggest using NOTS because I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, you still have an option to just use Core settings with NOTS.
Yeah, if you're using NOTS, you can just set the in the config file. It's called Core policy equals 1, and that'll change all the defaults to match what Bitcoin Core does, and then you still have the full flexibility of being able to configure your own settings on top of that.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't see any benefit to using core for mining, especially like even if you disagree with policy. I mean, you have that option still, and then additional things on top of that. So I don't see any draw for it. I don't see any reason.
All right. Well, I think we've covered everything, and yeah, that's it. That's all we got. So I think let's let's kill it, guys. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll be back soon we got some cool stuff coming up over the next few months. Some very interesting ideas that should shake up mining as much as Datum did with some other stuff. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And without, we're checking
2025
out.
is going to be wild.
Yeah, see you guys soon. Happy Christmas.
Waves of fortune keep us spinning around in the ocean.